Welcome to this beginner tutorial series on making your own low poly asset library. Sure, you can find plenty of low poly assets for free out there, but I think there's a lot of value in making some of these things for yourself, especially early on when learning Blender, because this will give us an opportunity to look at some various tools that we have for modeling and texturing. This series is intended for beginners, but it assumes some basic knowledge of how to navigate Blender. If this is your first time using Blender, I suggest doing my level 1 tutorial series where you will make an animated model of our solar system. That series is intended for people who have never used Blender before. This series that we're doing here does assume that you know the basics of how to navigate the program, but we will go step by step for each part. So before we get started making stuff, we're going to need to set up a few things in Blender first. You're going to open up Blender, and you're going to go up to Edit, choose Preferences. From there, you're going to go to File Paths, and then you're going to find Asset Libraries, and then there's this default one that they have here, but I'm going to add a custom one. So we hit plus, and then you're going to select the directory that you want to use for your asset library. I made one on my D drive for Blender Asset Library. And we want to just call this Standard Assets. Okay, and so that should be good there. So now that that is registered, we can make sure that it's saved. I've got autosave on, but just save anyways. Close out of the preferences, and now we have this file here. And so we're going to want to turn this into a file that will store a bunch of our assets. So we need to go File, save that, and we're going to want to go to that directory we just assigned as our asset library, and we're going to call this low poly assets. Then we're going to save it. Now any of the objects that we mark in this file as an asset will now be available in the asset browser. So let's say we wanted to just rename this cube test asset. And then we'll do something to make it a little bit different. We'll just go ahead and rotate it, Control A to just apply the rotation. So now we're going to go up here to our test asset, right click, choose Mark as Asset, and then make sure you save the file. You'll now see these little books, this little icon appear, and that's just telling you that this is marked for the asset library. So now if we go to File, New, just choose General, and then down here at the bottom, just expand the timeline, and we're going to change this to the asset browser by clicking on this little selector here. Go over to Asset Browser. Then what we need to do is go from the current file, we want to go down to our standard assets thing that we just made, or if you named yours something else, it would be that. And now you see we have our test asset in the browser, and we can just drag it into our scene. And it comes in, as you can see, with the rotation that we applied in the other file. So that'll do it for part 1 of this tutorial set. In the next part, we are going to use the proportional editing tool to make some low poly trees. If you enjoyed this tutorial, I have other tutorials in the works, so hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on them. And if you really like this tutorial, in the description there is a link to my Patreon. So head on over there, and my supporters get exclusive asset packs and other cool stuff I have made over the years for animation, VFX, video production, Dungeons and Dragons, all sorts of stuff. Alrighty, thanks for watching. Cheers.